Hi, my name is Carlos Sandoval. I am a doctoral candidate at the UC Irvine School of Education. I presented and created this poster with Dr. Elizabeth Van Ness, my advisor, also at the University of California, Irvine School of Education. And we presented this poster on our networked improvement community across the UC teacher preparation campuses at the Carnegie Foundation Summit on Improvement in Education in April of 2020. This conference is primarily for practitioners and researchers of improvement and improvement methodologies, and our work was selected to be shared as a poster. This work happened through the California Teacher Education Research and Improvement Network, or CTERN. This poster is providing an overview of the work of the networked improvement community that is focused on improving the preparation of teachers to build on multilingual student strengths. This network began spring of 2018, and in particular, spring of 2018 is when we identified the central problem that we wanted to work on. Following that, in the summer, fall, we worked towards trying to really define and refine the problem and develop a shared understanding of our problem, along with creating an aim statement, a theory of improvement, and some process measures. Year 3 was sort of collecting baseline data and trying to test some change ideas and developing an outcome measure. This network comprised primarily of 5 campuses: UC Santa Barbara, UC Berkeley, UC Irvine, UC Davis, and UCLA. And CTERN acted as the hub of this network, with myself being the primary improvement facilitator, along with my advisor, with some help from undergraduate research assistants and other teacher educators that are involved in CTERN. Our network really centers on one routine, which is 90-minute quarterly Zoom meetings. Those happened in the spring, and as well as 60-minute monthly campus meetings. We had actually gone from monthly 90-minute network meetings to this format around 90-minute quarterly Zoom meetings and 60-minute monthly campus meetings. And then we pivoted back to the monthly meetings based on some of the things that we learned, and in particular, sort of the pandemic really got us there. And we also have an annual 1.5-day convening, had one for 2 years. Again, the pandemic sort of cut that short. But that convening is where we came to reflect, or in our first year, really define what it is that we wanted to accomplish together. So our aim really centered on trying to improve candidates' noticing dispositions and skills for building on multilingual student strengths. And our theory of improvement centered around these 3 primary drivers: candidates practicing learning about multilingual students, candidates practicing designing instruction for multilingual students, and candidates practicing navigating for advocating for multilingual students. And what you see on the far right boxes are secondary drivers that really specify some specific concepts that are central to our driver diagram. For those not familiar with driver diagrams, this reads a lot like a logic model, such that you can read this from right to left as a series of if-then statements. If we had an awareness of power, privilege, positionality, and ideologies, if our candidates had that awareness, then they would practice learning about multilingual students so that we can improve their noticing dispositions and skills for building on multilingual student strengths. We collected a number of different kinds of data around our driver diagram and process measures in particular. Our measurement to this point has really centered on a short survey. Takes on average about 3 minutes for candidates to complete, and 8 items comprised this survey. It was administered every 6 weeks from September through March, up until the pandemic hit and folks went remote. And so what we have here is just one of these displays that really asked candidates, in the past week, I incorporated some aspect of my multilingual students' languages, communities, or families into an activity or a lesson. And this is really attached to the driver candidates practice designing instruction, but it's also attached to the driver around candidates practice learning about multilingual students. I put this on here because it showed some interesting variation. I've only included the campuses and the programs that had sort of like consistent data collection from September through late February, early March. And we think it sort of unveils some interesting variation. And we used this recently to sort of help us identify bright spots and learn what we can from different campuses. So, for example, right before the pandemic hit, we interviewed the UC Santa Barbara single subject program to understand, what practices they were engaging in that led them to sort of this consistent improvement over time. They were the one campus that sort of, got better with every single administration. And that revealed some interesting practices, such as Knowles Foundation grant that afforded them the ability to blend sort of math and science methods instructors, sort of bring those folks in conversation with folks who really center language. So we're still working with them to unveil some of those practices. We learned a number of things around sort of doing improvement, particularly in teacher preparation. One of the things we learned is that the driver diagram is an interesting tool for helping describe some of our values, and sort of making it stable is a bit of an effortful accomplishment. We have to constantly negotiate and renegotiate and check ourselves, and I think that's sort of an interesting insight into the micropolitics of doing improvement. A couple of other things, sort of the changes to teacher preparation activities throughout the year really underscored the need for baseline data. So when we first collected this systematically, we couldn't tell whether some of these ebbs and flows, if you look at the improvement data, the rises or sort of the peaks and the valleys are due to just the ebbs and flows of the program. Like, they took a course in the fall that really focused on language. Then after that, they didn't, right? And so we really wanted to collect some baseline data around what that flow looked like. We weren't able to get the full opportunity to do that, but we did get some here. And we also sort of learned about some different programmatic handoffs and changes in the kinds of activities that teacher candidates engage in that really have constrained our ability to iterate on tests. So in teacher preparation, you have different courses every term and different instructors with different foci. So it was always harder to test or collect data in contexts where language was not a core focus, even though, if you ask teacher educators, they want their candidates to be able to talk about and incorporate some aspect of their multilingual students' languages or families into an activity or lesson. Teacher educators want their candidates to do that all the time, regardless of class. But it was hard for us to gain insight into the kinds of changes, because every new term was a new set of courses, a new set of instructors, and sometimes even new context in their placements. And so what we had hoped to have followed up after this was sort of in focusing our improvement efforts on maybe one of these primary drivers to really center, really focus ourselves and come up with more focused changes. Collecting baseline data to sort of get an insight into the conversation around, like, what do teacher educators want these data to look like? We had also sort of subgrouped improvement data to identify other potential areas for improvement that we can sort of focus on. And we wanted to start identifying a small set of change ideas that are tested iteratively across campuses, along with managing some of these handoffs to sort of really improve the continuity of doing improvement work in the teacher preparation context. So that's our poster. Thank you so much for listening in.